of sepsis in a lunatic asylum. 15 years later, he became, posthumously, the father of modern infection control. He had a story to tell, which he told, and nobody heard it. So, I've thought about presentations for quite a long time. And I've come up with this really complex analogy that a presentation is made up of 3 parts. A presentation, and a presentation. The first presentation is the message. So as educators, P1, the story, is what you want to share with the people you're teaching. Doesn't matter whether it's 5 minutes, keynote speech of 25 minutes, or even your master's thesis. What do you want to share with your audience is P1. P2, if it's a presentation, is your supportive media, whatever is behind me. And P3 is the delivery of that. Now, I think presentations suck. I think virtually every presentation I have ever seen, bar about 5%, sucks. And I got so upset with that that I decided to try and do something about it. And I went for coffee with a friend of mine, and she was half hour late. And I sat in the coffee shop trying to figure this out, and it came up with this really clever idea. That the product of these 3 parts is the value of the presentation. The product of your story, your media, and your delivery. However good they are, all together comes up with this thing that I call the P cubed value. Now the math sort of works, and it's not important. I'm sure most of you can manage that sort of sum. But think about any presentation as the product of the story, the media, and the delivery. That's the P cubed value. So, I'm going to show you a presentation. So, clinical audit. To identify the efficacy of the PCAR exclusion criteria, CT scans, blunt abdominal trauma. Tom is a registrar of mine. He works in Leeds at the minute. Blunt abdominal trauma is significant more about children. CT scans are valuable tool making diagnoses contain CT scans utilize significant radiation. Young people and children particularly vulnerable to carcinogen effects in conjunction with PCAR and homes. This is the reference here. Exclusion criteria to identify children very low risk, specific intervention, blunt abdominal trauma. Don't know why that's there. These are Tom's slides. CT scans between July 2010 and 2016. Usual exclusion criteria. Here we go. 100 scans fulfilled the criteria. No, they didn't. It was 94. There we go. 94 scans fulfilled the criteria. 6 were unnecessary. That's right. 4 were necessary but unnecessary, and 2 had dead people. This review supports the efficacy of the PCAR exclusion criteria to predict those cases at very low risk of intra-abdominal injury. Radiation exposure in young people is essential to prevent future malignancy. This is the Alara principle. This doesn't matter. Thank you. So, from the point at which I started here to this point now, I want you, in pairs, to critique what was wrong with that presentation. Absolutely anything. Think of story, think of media, think of delivery. 2 minutes. What was wrong with it? Go. Question for you. Why am I using that on that
Probably had it he showed us what to do. I quite like that.
Yeah, that's a
I'll put it in my future presentation.
But most people can't see it.
Not as big as
No. Yeah, I can show problem. There's like too much going on.
The worst thing is I've actually seen presentations like right, obviously there's a bit of actually seen presentations like that.
Okay, so let's start from the back. What was wrong with that presentation, chap in the green shirt? A lot of text in the media. No message. So P2, media total. P1, there's no story. Back to the audience. Yep. I took ownership. I hated them. Yep.
Like you moving around was quite distracting.
Like I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a problem with delivery?
Step in front of the projector.
Yeah. Okay. So there's all sorts of things. We know what's wrong with a presentation. Most of you, as soon as the Times New Roman Microsoft Center Justified comes up on the screen, you know it's going to be hell. How long that hell is going to go on for, nobody knows. But just about every presentation you have seen sucks because of a failure of attention to P1, the story, P2, the media, and P3, the delivery. What you end up with is a content overload. There's just a ton of stuff. It was all there if you wanted to read it. The data becomes very confused. Did anyone notice the difference between the dates? I gave one date spoken and one date written. Which one do you think people believe? They always go for the text. People will just get rid of the presenter if they think there's a problem. And ultimately, did anyone know what that was about? No idea. The message fails. And yet, I actually did tell you everything you needed to know. It's all there. This is Semmelweis' paper on infection. What he discovered was that the doctors were doing dissection in the pathology lab and going straight to the maternity suite and not washing their hands. Their coats were covered in dead people. And although they didn't know what it was, the essence of dead person was what was carrying the disease that killed 10 times more people. It's all there. It was all there in his presentations, but he could not deliver it effectively so that the world would be changed. Why do we present like this? So you have 2 minutes to talk about why your presentation, why do presentations suck? Why do presentations happen the way you have seen? 2 minutes, go. What's the next thing? Is that technical guru? So now I'm presenting. Presenting that.
Voice quivers, start to forget things, referring to the slides.
That's very true. I suppose you kind of expect it just to yeah, it doesn't matter how sometimes yeah, exactly. Always
Never mind.
It worked for me. But did it work? That's the question.
Bad habits.
Yeah, it's still great. I didn't think I'd be great at support it. You don't want to put it great, but yeah, consultant and great support. It's like it's fantastic so far. The best thing is Skype, but I live really close to it. It's a quick nip in and out. What about yourself? That's close to here. Right, okay. No Mexicans. Okay. So if you didn't know, so if you've got a patient 60 and it's in your you have to call it the hospital.
Okay, so why do we present like that? This lady here.
Yeah, good.
Why do we present so badly? Yes, very good. Yep. Very good. Nice lady here. Yeah, not interested, don't care. Yep.
We made a point about how you now probably all value your time a bit more highly than you used to. And if you feel that somebody is up there making a presentation that's not giving you a message and helping you, you actually feel it out. I think
I hate this shit. Who are you? Absolutely, we just take it straight through. And some people are saying it should look like your document. Has anyone actually been taught to present? No, nobody's taught to present. We just copy everybody. Yeah. Don't worry.
I think it's lack of awareness of how important the purpose of teaching can be. I think it's good to understand that is the reason we
Yeah. So it's a combination of all of those things. The first thing is lots of us want to be the same. We don't want to stand out, do we? We want to be the same. It amazes me that if you travel 12,000 miles and walk past some hotel room in Australia, the same thing will be going on. Microsoft Blue Wave Times New Roman Center Justified. It is the worst virus in the world. 300 presentations every second are being delivered, apparently, and virtually all of them are Microsoft Blue Wave Times New Roman Center Justified bullet points. That's terrifying. That's worse than HIV, and it kills. A lot of us are frightened, and I count myself in that, by the audience. So what we focus on is the microphone or the lectern or our laptop, and definitely not on the people we're talking to. It takes time to do a good presentation, something a lot of us have very little of, and as you've said, we're just given somebody else's slides, we have to do it till tomorrow, we've got all those other things we need to do and no time to make it better. Ultimately, this works for you guys, not for older people. Nobody cares. It's another presentation. Let's just get through this. Coffee will be soon. Yeah, and that's from this point as well as from that point there, as our colleague made. And ultimately, we all know we want a different direction, but it is like a foreign language and we don't know what to do, so we all just turn right and do the same Microsoft Blue Wave Times New Roman Center Justified. Does anyone have in their collection a Microsoft Blue Wave Times New Roman Center Justified presentation? In 1999 there was a film called The Matrix. In The Matrix, one of the lead characters, Morpheus, speaks to Neo and he says, "The world as you perceive it is not real." And I am here to tell you that that is the case for education. Neo has this inkling that the world may not be as he perceives it. And you are the same as Neo. Neo means new. And bizarrely, Morpheus is the god of sleep, which works really well for talking about presentations. Reading is not teaching. Little head nodding over there, gently touching the matrix. Reading is not teaching. Reading out your PowerPoint, however eloquently and passionately and with time and effort, that is not teaching. And as our colleague pointed out, the corollary of that is also the case. Sat there listening to someone reading out PowerPoint is not learning. Now, if you start to understand the implications of that, reading is not teaching and listening is not learning, you will recognize that the world of education as you perceive it is a virtual reality. Morpheus offers Neo a choice. He says you can go on believing that the world is as you see it is and take the blue pill. You'll forget this has ever happened and life will be fine. And that's the case for you now. You can go on believing that typing stuff into PowerPoint and reading it out to people is effective education if you want. I will not be there. Or you can take the red pill and come with me down the rabbit hole. The world will never be the same again. Ever. It's your choice. Red or blue pill. Now, there's some science behind what I'm saying. This is not simply about style, fashion, or the latest thing. Pi is a mathematical constant. It defines the relationship between the circumference and the radius of a circle, only for Euclidean geometric shapes. It's irrational, transcendental, and therefore cannot have continued periodic fraction. It won't repeat itself. Pi is 3.14159265358979323 846 26 4 3 3 8. Is there anyone here who now knows pi to more numbers than they did before? This is the matrix. This slide comes from the International Intensive Care Society meeting, 2018, where intensive care professors read this shit out to intensive care professors. At what point did none of them know that norepinephrine is the vasopressor agent of choice? This is the matrix. I want you not to read this slide. It's quite hard, isn't it? Don't read it because I want you not to read it. I want you to concentrate on me. So, gentleman there in the black pullover, you're reading the slide. Is there a reason why I told you not to read the slide and you continue to read the slide? There is. The reason is psychology. That doesn't work. 93 psychological principles that this research paper identified that make us fail when we deliver presentations. 93 psychological principles. Not just one or two, 93. With text, you are no better than a hypnotized chicken. Did anyone see the hypnotized chicken? You were reading the slide. This is a chicken about to be hypnotized. Nothing bad happens to the chicken. It's hypnotized by a line in the sand. As hypnotized as you were by the text. That will come back on and you will be hypnotized by it. Chickens have no evolutionary advantage by being hypnotized by a line in the sand. It's not useful, and yet this poor chicken is hypnotized. in the same way you will be by the text that comes back onto that screen. So hands up those who have not looked at the text. No better than a hypnotized chicken. It's down here. It's quite long there. This is cognitive load. Your brain is not clever enough to do more than one thing at a time. I know you all think you are awesome at multitasking. So when you're on your phone trying to listen to somebody and you've got your laptop on and the telly's on and you're talking to somebody, you are not multitasking. You're just lying to yourself or the other people. Cognitive load, you cannot listen and think. You cannot listen and read at the same time. The clever ones out there will know which parts of the brain you process that in, but they're separate parts. Some people say, well, I will help myself concentrate by writing notes. So you're now doing 3 things at one time. If there's anyone out there speaking English as a second language, you're doing 4 things at one time, and none of you are thinking. Because that is a completely separate process. Have you ever found yourself reading the cornflakes packet, and yet you don't know what it said? You just read it. That is cognitive load. The second important process is this. This is what's called the dual processing of multimedia theory. This is a cat, k-a-t, which is monumentally patronizing unless you are this age. It's okay, run your fingers along. However, in the Matrix, you go to an international scientific meeting. There is clear evidence that these should be managed conservatively. There's a lower use of blood and blood products, lower morbidity and mortality. Why are you even reading along with me? Transfixed by the text. Dual processing of multimodal theory patronizes you to the point at which you go, seriously, are you just reading that shit out to me? You may not think it, but your brain is going all at the same time. And that is one of the main psychological reasons we hate presentations. So what do? We sit in them, we try again, and then we give up. And this is our experience of what happens in presentations. This guy is desperately trying to concentrate. This one here is, well, let's just say everyone who's on their laptop is taking notes. I firmly believe that. This guy here realizes that that is the most efficient way of getting information from one person to lots of people. This guy here is terrified because the woman beside him is half naked and the guy in the middle is dead and no one cares. Or actually, they're jealous. Hands up those who have never slept in a presentation. Never. Bless. This is the Matrix. There's a ton of science. I could go on for about an hour and a half. People have stopped doing research on how bad PowerPoint is because we know how bad PowerPoint is. The evidence is there. The people out there who are writing, but I'm a visual learner, that was debunked 40 years ago. You are a visual learner if you're 5. But to have got this far, you're what's called a blended learner. That means you take input from all sorts of places at all sorts of times. This is the Matrix. You have to decide, because if you don't, well, let's just think about it. Let's say 5 lectures a day for 5 years times 200 in your year. At most, you can retain 3 facts from one lecture. Your education was a complete waste of time. You did not get your medical degree sat in a lecture theatre. You got it on the wards, in your study rooms, in tutorials, in discussion, and by magic. You did not get it from the lectures. Do you even know where your lecture notes were? Did you ever even refer to them? This is the matrix. It's scary, and as Neo found out, the world is not as you perceive it. Look out that window. That is a virtual reality based on this concept of education. And you have to make a choice. The choice is yours, but that's what I suggest you do. Because you know, like Neo, that this is not quite the way you want education to be. Up in the top left-hand corner is a little green dot flashing, but it's not on the screen. Do you have any questions about the science of fail?
I agree with what you're saying about PowerPoint not being the most effective or most efficient way of delivering information. Do you think there's a place for, I think, so the way I think of presentations is all without into lecture-based medical school, is that the PowerPoint is essentially just an introduction to the topic, and as boring as it can be, I find it quite helpful to annotate a few notes on the actual handouts, and then most of the learning happened afterwards. But it was the information that was in the actual slides that I used to learn.
So why did you go to the lectures?
As I guess for one, as an introduction to the topic, to actually learn what we need to learn, and also as an opportunity to ask questions to the presenter at the time if anything doesn't particularly make sense.
So let me go back. You are one of the only people in the world who's able to multitask. You can write, listen, think, all at the same, and take notes at the same time.
I suppose you're not doing more at the same moment in time.
Exactly. So you're not. So if you're not doing that, then something has to be dropped. The thing that's dropped is speech first. If you're lost, you turn the radio off in the car for some reason. It doesn't actually get you there any faster, but it stops that input. So what most people do in your situation is they stop listening to the lecture and they just read stuff. That is the least efficient way of doing it. So you should get the notes and read the notes. Now, this involves, as one of your colleagues said, a change in how we are educated. But that lecture was a waste of time because you were basically interpreting the notes, not listening to the lecture. And then you were doing an interpretation of his interpretation of the facts later when you checked your notes, which were imperfect. Now, you're all of the generation where you download an app. Let's say you only downloaded 50% of that. 50% of an app is useless. 50% of your salary, useless. 50% of your annual leave, useless. 50% of a lecture, probably worse than useless, because you would only focus on the key bits that you were interested in and you didn't have the complete thing. And any lecturer or university who thinks they can deliver all of cardiac physiology in 1 hour, that's why you're laughing. That's a long and complex answer to your question, but no, I don't think they're useful. I think they have a value, but the way they're delivered is very bad, and worse, there is clear evidence that what was done there actively inhibits your learning, and that by simply turning the slides off, you would have got more out of the lecture. That is clear scientific principle. Gentleman at the back. Yes. Does improving the quality of presentations improve the delivery, improve the retention? Yes. Here's a question. The best presentation you ever went to, most people say it was when the professor turned up, her slides didn't work, and she just talked to us. That's the best. The worst is when they stand and read the whole thing off to you. Somebody else had a question over here. No?
So we were just saying where it happened in our teaching.
Yeah? Any other questions about the science?
Why do medical schools and universities still do it? There's so much evidence.
Don't know. One reason is they don't know what the evidence is. The next is that they are not educationalists. Just because you're a professor of endocrinology does not make you a teacher. And just because you're a professor of endocrinology and dean of the medical school does not make you a teacher. And so we perseverate. The same reason you guys do Microsoft Times New Roman Centre Justified lecture is the same reason the professor and the dean of the medical school thinks that this is a good idea. But trust me, when they find out that it isn't, it is really quite upsetting. And that's when they get very angry, because they're saying, what do you mean I've been wasting my time? Ask, there's people in your year who did not go to lectures. Some of them are complete wasters. Let's not deny that. But some of them said, what's the point? I can learn more from the textbooks in comfort, have a deeper understanding, check up the facts, go on YouTube, get the thing from Stanford, and I will know more about this. And when the dean of the medical school figures that out, the world is going to change. You are near. You are going to change the world. Scary stuff.
Why did you choose to deliver us a PowerPoint presentation?
I haven't. This isn't PowerPoint. This is supported media. I can do it without this. It adds to it, but what it is not is Microsoft New Wave, Times New Roman, Center Justified, 350 bullet points. It's a discussion, it's interactive, and I will show you why in the next session. Yeah?
Do you think it's worth doing the traditional qualifications of medical education?
No. It is if you go into it with an open mind, but if you go in there and sit down the first day and they put up Microsoft, Times New Roman, Center Justified, and bullet points and start reading it out to you, then leave. I've submitted to AME, the Association of Medical Educators, on 3 times about this form of education, and they say, we don't want that, we know this. Anyone been to AME? It is the worst conference I have ever been to, because it is full of Microsoft, Times New Roman, Center Justified, Blue Wave, of people reading shit out. There are lots of reasons why we do this, but we have to change the way in which we think education works. You know it. That's why you're here.
I just wonder, as if English is your second language,
Yeah.
having a visual aid sort of help me, especially if things involve flow diagrams or things like that, processes.
Okay, it's a common question. No is the answer. Most people who have English as a second language, who are in this sort of meeting, are very good at English. So they already understand English. If you add in a lot of text, that is more confusing. Most of us, if we only speak German very badly, can still order beer in German and understand what people are talking to us about, but not the intricacies. If you put the text up, they are having to interpret text in a foreign language, which is a different processing than listening to the English. So it becomes more complex. Putting up a complex flowchart is even more complex. It makes it harder. People who don't speak English at all will find the text too complex. So you should just put up single words that will help them. So science of fail, and then it can then work with that. But if they're in the point at which they understand English well enough to be here, then putting up complex text makes it worse, because they'll get stuck on the nuances of the declension of the verb, or what noun is that, rather than hearing the flow as we can conversation, is what the evidence shows. I'm just stretching. Okay. I cannot answer all the questions right now, but I would love to answer the questions. If you're on Twitter, follow me at Folliot. I'll show you how to find that. Go to my website, which is P-Cubed Presentations. Send me an email, or even come and talk to me at the coffee break. This is my website, nearly. When I was doing my masters, my prof said, anyone can have an opinion. If you can explain it in 3 paragraphs, then you will start to understand your opinion. So I started writing. I've written 350 blog posts on this, and that's now encapsulated in this website. One of the most important parts of the menu is that one, hashtag HTDAP, how to do a presentation. And this is the website, the web page. There are 27 individual parts to that, and the most important part is the URL, which is there. That is the single message. That is how to get to it. Hashtag HTDAP, how to do a presentation. And what I've just shown you in 30 seconds is how to do a presentation. there are things you're going to teach about that are complex. You should strip that down into a single identifiable message and then make the message portable and immediately retrievable. What's the hashtag? HTDAP, without reading it off. How to do a presentation. So there are 3 parts to a presentation, and I'm going to talk about those 3 parts. We're going to do a little bit of workshop. You have to work. And we're going to talk about P1, which is the message, the media. So the message, the story, what you want to get from you to your audience, whether it's a small group teaching, something like this, lecture or keynote presentation. This is what happens in the matrix. It's all about the what. It's a list of 1,000 facts read out interminably in the vague hope that some of that will stick. What we're going to do is change that. It's about taking the what and converting that to a so what. And I'll work on what that means as we come through this. What I want you to do in your groups at your tables is prepare a presentation. If you just think about this, you won't actually put any effort into it. So you have to decide at your table a presentation that you are going to give. You're not actually going to give it, but we're going to work on it. So you have 2 minutes to decide on a presentation. It can be anything. It can be management of diabetic ketoacidosis in the over 80. It can be best coffee shops in Manchester. It can be United every time. I don't care, but you have to work with it as your group. You need to have a topic and you need to have an audience to whom you're going to speak. They have to be in a room, so you can't say people at a bus stop or Manchester City fans. Okay, it has to be they're in a room, you're going to give that talk. 2 minutes each table, and we're going to share that because that's a way of learning. Go. Topic, audience.
What topic should we go?
Yes, please. The bake-off session.
Yeah.
Which cake are we choosing? Brownies.
Yeah.
You don't agree?
Yeah.
I don't know how to make them, but yeah.
That is right. I found it a movie audience.
Why don't we do like school kids?
Do you want?
School kids?
School kids, okay, yeah.
Like a home ec.
That's good.
Yeah.
No, we're not
So we're going to teach school kids how to make the best brown. That's a key message.
Don't overdo the sugar. Kills it.
Don't use more sugar.
I said don't overdo the sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we should talk about healthy eating. I feel like we should talk about brownies.
It's alright, James almost got that covered. You're right.
Okay, so we'll start from the front, work round. You want to listen so you hear how these things evolve. Topic, audience.
How to make the best brownie.
How to make the best brownie to...
School children.
There's about 3 million of them out there. Which school children?
Year sevens.
Which school?
Password.
How have you got in there?
We spoke to the head teacher there and wanted to do a healthy eating / brownie session with them.
Okay.
Topic is how to take blood blood culture, and the audience is 30 medical students.
30 medical students, venipuncture.
What to do in Manchester in year 1.
What to do in Manchester? Lead to F1. Secondary school? Which school? A school. school. How are you feeling there? Walked up to the door. Strange man at the gate. A3 assessment, Liverpool F1. Manchester. Freshers.
So how to make the perfect curry for university students and University of Manchester?
How to make the perfect curry.
How to put on a nappy for new mums.
Mum's wearing nappies. Okay, how to put on a nappy. What I want you to consider now for 2 minutes are what are the needs of your audience from that talk. What are the needs of the audience from your talk? 2 minutes, go.
We need is to introduce us to safety. But then also special delivery, thinking about how you're going to break it down, because obviously you're going to start with year 7, just year 12, how would we adapt our Kickstarter to year 7?
We need to make it fun and engaging as well.
Also, regular behavior methods are going to say low tension, but we have to make it not too heavy that we're just talking to them.
Go straight away.
Yeah, involve a demonstration and also aim for smaller groups. So the ratio between presenters and speakers will be smaller, like 1 to 5 or
Okay, so the needs of the audience here on making curry. Okay. Reinforcing knowledge, build a confidence. Okay. Okay.
So they need to know why it's taken in the first place and how to actually do it.
Audience needs, they need to know, well, it's year 7, so they might not never used kitchen utensils, something to do with safety, initial, like how to make the brownies, how to buy the ingredients, those kind of things.
Okay. What I want you to consider is how most of you decided what your needs were of telling these people the facts. I asked you what the needs were of the audience. Those are not the same things. What do the audience want to do with a curry? They want to eat it, which is not the same as telling them what's in it. What do the audience want to do in Manchester? They want to have fun. They don't necessarily want to know about the buses and where to, what's going on, but their needs are not what you think they are. And definitely this table up here, you were telling them what you wanted them to know, rather than what they wanted to know. For you guys, F1s are just thinking, shut. How can I remember this stuff? The needs of the audience are the first thing you should consider when you do a presentation. You need to look at them and think they're old and young, male and female, experienced and inexperienced. The person who is 40 may have been a paramedic before and know all about BLS. The needs of the audience are the first thing you should do when you're writing a presentation. What do they need from this? Not what do I need to give to them? For 2 minutes, what I want you to consider is what is the aim of your talk? What's the aim of your talk? 1 sentence, go.
The aim of this is to make it yeah.
For the parents.
That's what's fun, isn't it? Whereas like aim to make it a whole, that's like one teacher up there, and then the aim of that session will be to learn.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued.
To remake
Asking people actually
people in an environment.
Playground.
What guys use that project for the game? Is there a link or is it just...
I've mentioned it before.
What did you say? Was that?
Yeah.
Becoming bigger and bigger.
Is it posted?
Okay, so 1 sentence. Aim of your talk is?
But the children learn how to make a brownie.
Children learn how to make a brownie.
That third-year medical students competent to take bloods.
Competent to take bloods. Teach people how to make curry. Inspire to explore Manchester. Knowing they're confident and confident, that's some talk. Size about living in Manchester.
You said that.
Amazing.
That yours?
Yeah.
Basically to fulfill the need that they expressed to you at the beginning of the session, potentially, rather than kind of redefine thing.
Okay. Well, 2 minutes. What I want you to consider is what is the objective of your talk? What is the objective?
Objective
Well, that's annoying.
So the aim is the AD for them to be able to make a brownie. The objective is for them to learn how to make it.
Wait, is it no? What?
Objective the steps that you take to learn how to make
The objective.
So, yeah. The agenda basically.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
learn about the ingredients. Learn about the
Okay.
learn about
Like the
safety,
aim is the
so like-
overall goal,
Yeah.
and the objective is...
Okay.
We
think so.
Maybe it's the teaching cooking can be fun as well.
Yeah.
Baking can be fun. I don't know. Is that an objective?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun.
So would A be learning how to make a brownie and objectives be using utensils like glasses, safety, putting the ingredients together,
Taste test of the brownies. Really indulge you.
No, this is just what okay, what's the objective? Yeah? That's good. What's your objective? Recognize the sick person's skills to deal with it. Yeah. Patient safety. Yeah. Yep.
So we want them to see what being able to make a curry feel. We want them to see the steps to making a curry and to be able to make it efficient.
Uh-huh.
The objective would be to demonstrate on a real patient that they can actually take blood.
Demonstrate on a real patient they can take blood.
Save new mothers time and money.
Save new mothers time and money. Okay. So part of how I do workshops is a whole load of different principles that you should be aware of. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes like this they're not. If you always do the same point and shoot, then you always leave these people last and they always feel bad about it. So that's why you should mix things up and never just go around. You should go to each table and make sure you try and get a different person. And you should always try and make sure you do all of those things rather than miss one group out. Did I miss you guys out?
So our objectives were safe use of utensils in the kitchen, safe use of utensils to make the brownies, taste tests as well, so they enjoy it, and the ingredients.
Okay. Have I done everybody? One of the things that confuses people is the fact that aims and objectives are not the same. And if you write aims and objectives of the talk as your first slide, that shows firstly that you've been to an education session, and secondly that you paid absolutely no attention there. The aim of these artists was to cover the Reichstag, the German Parliament building, which is a pretty bonkers thing to do. That was their aim, and it's as bonkers as trying to cover metabolic acidosis in the under fives. Their objective was to have people discuss their Parliament building. What happened in that place in 1934 when Adolf Hitler was elected? What happened when it was blown up and burnt down? What happened when the two countries came back together? The aim of your talk is about you. Here are the things I want to deliver. The objective of the talk is about your audience and what you want for them. Inspired, eating curries. The lens of your talk on the image of the data has to change from teaching to learning. And this is the matrix. It's not about sharing information, it's about what happens with that information. If you think about it, you could give the same lecture to a group of Chinese students, eloquent in every way, amazing story, wonderful supportive media, delivered with a passion, but if they hear nothing because they don't speak English, it has failed. It's all about the audience. Education is not about the educators, it's about the audience and their learning. That's where we need to start making significant changes in how we deliver things. This is what your audience believes happens. That there's a USB bolt in the back of your head, somewhere under the hairline, that you can plug in. I can do Kung Fu. This is not the film, The Matrix. Learning is hard. It is not simply about information, it's about processing it, it's about questioning it, it's about challenging, it's about rejecting it, it's about making it part of your understanding. And it does not happen by reading stuff out to people or listening to them or even making notes. Learning is more than that. This is the shortest blog, no, it's the second shortest blog post. The best presentation has a single message, simple, memorable, and succinct. What's the hashtag? How to do a presentation. If you take nothing more away from today than that, then I have achieved my aim. How to do a presentation. Not all of the facts, but a simple message that is portable and transferable. What's this film? It's intro. Immediately, you are now reconstructing Cinderella. Some of you, Cinderella has made you the strong, independent man that you are. Some of you, it has given you a shoe fetish. Some of you, it has driven you mad as a babysitter. That's all that that kid would watch. But on the basis of that one image, you have started to reconstruct a story you maybe haven't seen for 15 years. Imagine if somebody came to you and said, that teaching you did on the ABCs of assessment 3 years ago, I remembered that and I saved somebody's life yesterday. That is what education is about. It's not all the facts, it's how they retain that information and use it. So what you need to do is this. For every presentation, you need to know where you are and where your audience are at the beginning and the journey that you are going to take them on to this point. Cinderella got married will keep no one's attention. Trust me, I've tried it. You have 17 minutes, not a second longer, and your audience will be bored. No presentation can ever go on longer than 17 minutes. Now, the astute amongst you will have recognized that this has gone on for more than 17 minutes. So what we can do is we can reset the clock. Break it up. Do different things. Challenge the audience. Have interaction. Show video. Get them to write stuff down. Have a quiz. All of that resets the clock. Maximum 17 minutes for one concept. More than that, they will give up, however amazing you are. So you have to learn to teach in blocks. First part, science of fail. Second part, presentation, P1, P2, P3. Third part is to come, and I'm not going to tell you that because you don't want to spoil the story. The most important thing is A and B. So that if I arrived and Mem said, I'm really sorry, the previous speaker has gone on for an hour extra, you've got 1 minute, I could stand up here and say, presentations, as you know, suck. We have to change them for the benefit of your audience. The way you change it, hashtag HTDAP. Red, A and B. That's it. And if you can't do that for your last teaching session, you just rambled on. Now, what's really important is that you write down everything you are going to say. What you're used to doing is just putting in some bullet points and thinking, yeah, I can talk around that. And you don't know. And that's one of the main reasons that people overrun, is because you just talk around the PowerPoint. And that's why you get to this point where you've got 5 slides left, you just have to go as fast as you possibly can. Oh, this isn't important. Oh, this bit here, sorry, I need to go back to that bit. And it's all a complete waste of time. Write out what you want to say, and then time it. 80% of your allocated time, not 1 second more. Hands up those who've been to a presentation that's overrun. Keep your hand up if it was of any use in going longer. Then you need to translate what you're going to say from written into spoken. Because the way we write stuff is not the way we speak to people. I wouldn't have put stuff in if I was writing it down. We need to make it conversational. And actually you probably don't need to write it out. You need to put your script down and then talk it out without your script and see where you get to. Now that has challenges, and we'll come back to that. This is how we are going to behave in the real world. We are going to stop trying to do a data download and convert it into a so what for our particular audience, understanding your aim and their needs. Make it memorable, make it succinct. What's the hashtag? That's called spaced repetition. Cheesy, annoying, but you all remembered it. If that's how you remembered that you have to give adrenaline, does it matter? That's what education is about. Do you have any questions about P1, constructing a story? Okay, the question is, how do you make something complex simple? I just have. It's hard work, and you need to figure it out. And that's what makes you an educator, not an elocutor. You're going to find out what's going on. But the key to that is you stop looking at it like a data download. So for our resuscitation team over here, if you list every single fact in the protocol, they will be bored. But if you say to them, all you need to do is cardiac compressions, 30 to 2, that is the basis. The rest follows after that. And expect your audience to get the learning elsewhere. The understanding is 30 to 2. I've got to do that. That's all I've got to do. And the things that come after that are the learning. Get away from the boat and get into the, here's the URL that we can start from. It's hard, and that's what makes great educators, is how they make it approachable for their particular audience, because you know what they are, what their skills are, how they work. So that the matrix might not work for a bunch of 10-year-olds, but it definitely works for a bunch of 40-year-olds. So for you guys, I have to sort of squish it in and see who it works for. Does that help? Any other questions?
So just to clarify what you said, with complex topics, you're essentially introducing the main concept, the main messages. You expect the audience to get the bulk of their reading is from another source of the textbook.
Yeah. You are not going to download all the information. It's just impossible. Even if there were 10 facts that you were going to get people to memorize, imagine if I just gave you 10 individual facts you have to learn. How hard is that? It is hard just to remember 10 facts, and yet we throw hundreds of facts at people. Just because we've always done that does not mean it was effective. So you want it to be approachable, like the glass slipper. And then they can start to rebuild that, and you help them to rebuild it. So it's not the topic, but it's the challenges of managing Hirschsprung disease. Hirschsprung disease in the ED, and what to do if you're in trouble. 3 steps. Not Harold Hirschsprung first described Hirschsprung disease in 1886, post-mortem of 2 children. Who cares? The 2 children.
So, I sort of feel like this lecture is interesting because you've given us a lot of stories. You've got like the story of Semmelweis, the story of Neo, and also your story is the realization that PowerPoints are shadows. And TED Talks, which are all 17 minutes long, people basically tell a whole story. How can you sort of like say if I'm going to give a lecture on AKI, tell a story about that?
Okay, so thank you. The first thing is that story works. A case presentation is more valuable when there is a person involved in it. You remember how to manage AKI because of that woman in that bed in that hospital. And that's how it works. What that does to you is it changes your brain chemistry. If I tell you a story and measure the salivary cortisol, it will change at the end, and that will help you to learn. So stories are essential. When you go to a scientific conference, nobody listens to the crap on the stage, but we sit around in the coffee rooms and the bars, and we go, you'll never guess what Fisher did last week. And that's where the learning happens. Stories make a difference. Case presentations, 54-year-old male, bored. Picture of Brad Pitt up there, that's a 54-year-old male. Imagine him with AKI. It just makes a difference. So yes, use stories. They're not the only thing. We're not just telling a story, but stories work because we remember them. Have you ever been amazed that you can remember the punchline for a joke but not what happens beforehand? That's because that's the nubbin that you wanted to take away at the end. So what you have to do in your presentations is make it a story. Say, you are going to resuscitate a 3-year-old child right now. What does it feel like? And build it from there. Then give them the information so at the end you say, now, you can't remember all the facts, but do you think you could do it? It makes it personal, it makes it engaging. Okay, there will be more questions. We're going to move on. If I can get my machine to move on. There we go. That's the question. Ugh. Most people, when they think we're going to talk about presentation skills, think I'm going to spend an hour and a half talking about PowerPoint. I am not. P2 is important. In the matrix, it's an annotation. It's a list of text. It's something to read. What I want you to consider is that we need to change the world, and we need to stop annotating things and ideally illustrate them. Change from annotation to illustration. What I want you to discuss in your groups for 2 minutes is, what do you think the point is of the supportive media? What is the P2? Go.
Association, so what you're saying, associated with that emotion, the way of remembering.
Sometimes you need a visual illustration to drive home a message or to demonstrate something, a graph or something. Or a hard-hitting image. Props.
Helps keep you engaged as well. Some of the ones that are quite funny. That kind of keeps your concentration.
Okay, what do we think? This lady here. Yeah, good. Supports what we're saying.
Said it help engage people.
Engage.
Helps you to remember things.
Helps you to remember things. So it has lots of purposes. It's not your script. If your PowerPoint is your script, you're screwed. Your audience are screwed worse. You should give up, send it to them as an email, and use the time more effectively. It is not your defense. A lot of people will do this. They'll back away as far as they can so they're not in the way, so that all we can see is the screen. Because we're terrified of the audience. They might bite you or something. A lot of people think that the PowerPoint is a drug. And trust me, if you go to young learners and say, there will be no text on this, they'll like junkies without their smack. They will get irrational and angry and demanding, and all they want is their bullet points. I don't care, you just didn't value me. You didn't give me a download. Tough. Learning is hard. You need to work with me, and I'll give you the download at the end. And it's not going to be smack. This is what in the presentation world we call a slidegement, which is the bastard child of your slides and documents rammed together and read out to people. And for some reason, some of you are still trying to read about blunt abdominal trauma. Your PowerPoint plays a part in what's going on, but it is not the only thing. For most people, they say, I'm sorry, I couldn't make your presentation, could you email it to me? On the basic concept that there is everything you want to say, is everything that's on the screen, is everything you're going to read out. If that's all your PowerPoint is, you're doing it wrong. We need to make more of it than that. 93 psychological principles. You need to stop doing PowerPoint the way you've been doing it. It is wrong. Now, most scientists and physicians, we're not scientists, trust me, we just like to think we are. Design matters. Has anyone bought a new iPhone? Please put your hand up so I can laugh at Hands up those who've got an iPhone. Why have you got an iPhone? Nobody knows. Design matters. That's why you've got an iPhone. It doesn't do anything better than a Samsung or a Hawaii or whatever. It's just design matters. Design matters in your talk. This is a real presentation. Design matters. Some of you Muppets are trying to read that. Yeah? If we're in the matrix, we need to recognize that we have got to stop putting text on the screen and help the audience in some way. And the way we're going to do that is to illustrate what we're talking about. Stop annotating, start illustrating. This man is considering the difference between heart attack and heart failure. And you are too. Whereas previously you were just reading about it. You're thinking about that patient with a crushing chest pain as opposed to that patient who's big and fat because they're edematous and out of puff, and how different they are and how you manage them differently. That is illustration. We're going to stop doing the Microsoft Blue Wave Times New Roman Center Justified by reducing text. Now, I give this talk a lot and most people come away and say, Ross says don't use text. That is not true. It says reduce text here. Now, that means reduce significantly to 2 or 3 words. And then you'll say, well, just put 6 in. And then that would be 3 lines. And then that's 5. And then, well, just this one slide. And then you're the junkie back on the full dose. Reduce text. Text adds to an image. So this image is illustrating the difficulty of recruiting African women to a trial of the management of their HIV gained by sexual abuse. The recruitment of these women to that trial was significantly hampered by lots of factors. Now you start to understand. Now this is a story. This is real. You're looking into her eyes and wondering what horror she has gone through. And now you understand the difficulty of recruitment. Whereas reading it, it meant nothing to you. Images should be single, high quality, bled to the edge of your slide, and ideally fit on the sodding screen. High quality images. Google is your friend. I know that's where you get your medical education. You can also get images there. Single images. You can't look at more than one at a time. And if someone says, just look at this one, everyone will look at the other one. That previous one was discussing an intensive care, and here you are thrown into the middle of it. But remember, images affect people. You may have been the patient's relative at this end. Heaven forbid you've been the patient. You may have been the clinician at the top end, wondering what on earth to do. We all have the same image, but we will interpret it differently. This is a data slide. This has come directly from the CRASH-2 trial, and you are trying to interpret it, and you are bored. So what stupid people do is they use a red box. It says, only look at this bit here. What the really stupid people are doing is now reading below the red box because they think, I know more than you do. Hands up those who are looking below the red box. Come on. So what we're going to do outside of the matrix is improve our data slides. Make them accessible, make them memorable, make them simple so that within 3 seconds you know what the risk is of a vascular occlusive event using tranexamic acid. 1, 2, 3. There is no increased risk in using it. Simple data. The data itself, going back to our colleague, is complex. The message is simple. Pie charts. Why do we use pie charts? Anyone know? They're just fashion. The same reason people buy iPhones. Because you think it works. Pie charts don't work. A, you can't tell that, oh, it's gone. You have to go over here and figure it out and see this. Pie charts don't work. None of us can tell the difference between 3 and 8 radians on a circle. Don't use pie charts. You're only using them because they are fashion. This is the only effective pie chart that you should use. Pie eaten and pie not eaten. And the reason it works is because you can tell the difference between that and that. More than 3 things on a pie chart, it's impossible to tell the difference. You just use it because it's fashion. Stop putting references on your slide. It is not a document. Nobody can write that down before some muppet presses the button and it disappears. Don't use references. What's the hashtag? If you want people to download a ton of information, go to a website, use a video, give them a 14-page document, share the PDF of the paper that you're talking about, make it accessible, make it simple to get to, use electronic media if you want. First hit on Google, you try it, that's where it'll get you to. Don't use the trees. Make it accessible. Don't write it on the bottom of your slides, nobody can see them. What I suggest you do to illustrate a talk is you have a start and a finish. Within that, you then have 3 steps, whether it's a 45-minute keynote or a 5-minute teaching session. Each of those 3 steps can have 3 slides, and that's all you need. The astute amongst you will say, why have I used more than that? That's all you need. You can add more. But the commonest mistake I hear from people after I give this talk is they try to have a slide for every paragraph that we say. And they say, how do you have an image that says more than 1 paragraph? Don't. Be restrained. Ask yourself, why? Why do I even need a slide? Do you have any questions about P2? Does anyone wonder why I count to 7? When you ask a question, always wait for 7 seconds. Somebody will ask a question. I hate you. Right. Illustrate, don't annotate. All right. P3. You can have the best story in the world constructed to capture people's minds. You can have the most amazing supportive media. That here it's a complete of time. You have to deliver. You may be frightened, it may be difficult, but this is not a reading, it's a performance. If you just read stuff out to people, they will be bored. A test for you, turn the radio on and listen to the news as it's being read out, and then see how much more interested you are when people start to ask questions about the same topic. It's a performance, and it's an essential part of what's going on. If you don't engage the audience, it will fail. Remember the bad one at the beginning, what happened? We need to consider the fact that I have sweaty armpits. Okay? My heart rate is probably about 130. I am drinking water because I am consuming energy, and this is stressing me out. It might not look it, but I am controlling it. It doesn't go away, you manage it. But when I'm doing surgery, I am stressed. I don't shake like this anymore because I'm in control. The same happens when you teach or give a presentation. You manage it, it doesn't go away. This is an anaesthetic secretary, 9 to 5. But right now, she is Brunhilde. She is giving it everything because she cares. And if you don't give us stuff about teaching the medical students about basic life support, A, they know, B, they care, and C, you should just leave. You've got to care. You've got to get up and perform. Now, people say, I'm not an outgoing person. The most boring person I have ever met is Sean Bean. I'm bizarrely related to him by marriage. He is utterly boring. He is the most introverted person you have ever seen. Now, what you think of him as an actor is another thing, but he gets on the stage and he is whoever he needs to be. Now, you're thinking, well, I just can't do that. But think of what you are counselling, or taking a history from the patient, counselling the family member after he dies, leading the resuscitation during which he dies. You are three completely different people, because you have to be. And when you're delivering, you need to put on the helmet of truth and the golden croissant of power and be that person, because your topic is important. You need to keep to time. I have 1 minute. I'm nearly there. And you need feedback, and this is not feedback. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I very much enjoyed it. It's what louche people say because they've heard it said. It is just a phrase. It is not feedback on how awesome your presentation was. You get that from a trusted friend, and you say to Nick later, what was it like? And I say to Miriam, was that better than the last time we did it, and how can I make it even better? It's a skill. It's not a reading, it's a performance. Do you have any last questions? Yes.
What is the role of simulation in teaching?
Huge. Ask him. He's an expert. Anything more? There will be more questions. I will finish on time. Remember that presentation I gave you earlier? Reset. Pediatric trauma is scary. It's scary for those involved, and it's scary for those who manage it. For those who manage it, mostly we're afraid of monsters in the closet. And for that reason, we use CT to exclude every single injury, which is reasonable until you realize that's 250 chest x-rays worth of radiation just because I'm afraid of monsters in the closet. The PCARN group have developed a clinical grading scale that allows you to exclude 99.9% of significant injuries by history alone and examination alone. At Sheffield Children's Hospital, which is a major trauma unit, we retrospectively reviewed our use of PCARN and blunt imaging trauma. In a 4-year period, there were 100 trauma CTs carried out, of which 94 were appropriately predicted by the PCARN criteria. 4 weren't. They had hematuria, which is a clinical diagnosis with the PCARN criteria. 2 patients had no clinical indication for CT, but were both removed from one vehicle in which there were 3 fatalities, and therefore entirely appropriate. 100% of our trauma CTs were carried out for clinically appropriate reasons. There are monsters in the closet. This one is scary. For 500 trauma CTs, we will generate 1 malignancy. It's not about no radiation, but as little as reasonably appropriate. This is how you give a presentation. You convert it from the what to the so what. You illustrate it rather than annotate it, and you perform. This is a statue to Ignaz Semmelweis. He probably changed the history of the world by what he did, but he failed to communicate it. For 20 years after he figured it out, women and children continued to die. Your presentations are going to change the world. Thank you.